Grandmama used to pray, oh Lord, please save them from the evil snares and all the dangers that entangle. Yea, though they walking through the valley of the shadows, just prepare and make them fit for every battle. Because I know they bound to come, and I know they bound to fall, but in your bounty, Lord, preserve their beautiful. Right, we still survive and offer grandma's prayers, surrounded by the jungle and the lion's den. Tread light, cause these traps is inconspicuous. They hide right in plain sight, thinking we don't see them when they linger. Look right beneath the surface, then leave a trail of corpses. Crisis, prices, your life a disposable commodity. Like living in this fantasy, conditioned to believe that the system even cares. Whether selling CDs or walking or driving or reading, look, they don't even need a reason. It's just you breathing and being black. When it's such a pretty fall, it don't seem like we falling at all, at all. It's just a GMO dream, where things are never really what they seem. Please cue the violins, tell them just to play me something pretty, cause this gritty city got me screaming bloody murder. City got me screaming. This gritty city got me on some. Look, get your hand up on my pocket. Distraction, so lazy they use the same tactics. Like condom with some trinkets, just don't let them get to thinking. That light bulb gets a blinking. You know niggas and ideas. Oh dear, my dear, you may not know me, but I know you very well. Foresight, they say hindsight is 20/20. Well, tell me something, we gotta see that history is on repeat. And maybe it takes a beat and a melody to speak a little louder than the message in the clouds or the essence in the air. I swear, my God is just so clear that a system driven by fear can never give us nothing but more of the same things. Oh, when it's such a pretty fall, it don't seem like we falling at all. It's just a GMO dream, where things are never really what they seem. Please cue the violins, tell them just to play me something pretty, cause this gritty city got me screaming. It's murder. Got me screaming, got me. This gritty city got me on some.
What's happening? We are live and direct. This is RSTV, and we jumping right on in. You know what I mean? Usually I do an intro for the guests, like, you know, this is so and so, blase blah, so on and so forth. Today, comrade you seeing with me today, you know, he's definitely no stranger to the platform. He's no stranger to our movement. He's been putting in work before many of the folks that are checking it out was even thought of, probably before some of your parents met, you know. And today I wanted to, you know, we like to provide an analysis, a concrete analysis, because oftentimes folks get confused. They think that because, you know, someone looks like you or sound like you or talk like you or walk like you, that they are for you. So we wanted to, you know, set the record straight and clear things up, clear the air tonight. So without further ado, you know, the man, the myth, the legend, my man Ajamu Baraka. What's happening, Ajamu? How you doing today, comrade?
I'm doing good. I'm feeling good. I always feel honored to be with you and the kind of work that you are pumping out there and your consistency. So yeah, let's jump right into it. We got a whole lot to talk about.
Right on. I mean, today, you know, is no secret, you know, as always, since our first encounter with the current state, and even before they was recognized as the state that they are, we've always had to deal with terrorism. We've always had to deal with some type of policing agency, even if it wasn't called the police. You know, going back to the plantation and before the plantation, just dealing with these soldiers of oppression. You know, so again, it's you know, it's no surprise where we are. We'll keep being here until we make that change. You know, Tyre Nichols in Memphis. We got Cop City in Atlanta, and you know, we got, you know, you name it, anywhere USA, anywhere Earth, where imperialism lies, there's always suppression and terrorism. Right now, the Tyre Nichols situation. Folks are jumping out of their shoes and socks, talking about, well, it's, these cops were black, and they're getting confused because of the fact that they think that, because they're black cops or whatever, that it's not white supremacy, right? They're thinking it's not imperialism. It can't be because, those dudes are darker than us. You know what I mean? The particular cops that beat this brother, they're darker than us. What's your take on that? Let's clear the air. What is white supremacy? Is it just the complexion? Is it just the fact that you were born in Europe or the Caucasus Mountains somewhere?
Yeah.
What's white supremacy?
It reminds me of a situation I had many, many years ago. We were meeting with the international staff at Amnesty International. And our critique was that they were not as adamant about dealing with the issues in South Africa as reflective of an apartheid system, a racist system, as they should have been. And so we were in part of that meeting. They showed us a video to demonstrate to us that it was not possible to frame this as just a racial issue against white supremacy. And what they showed was a line of police that were firing at demonstrators. And about half of the police were black. So for them, the fact you have black police firing on these Africans, that demonstrated you can't reduce this to issue of. That to me captures the kind of confusion that people have. And is people are confused because they have assimilated an idea, a notion of white supremacy that reduces that idea of white supremacy just to something that is supposed to be in the minds of individuals, a certain kind of consciousness, a certain kind of prejudice, if you will. And so only certain kinds of people are white racists, Donald Trump or Steve Bannon or the Ku Klux Klan. But others, like Joe Biden, are not supposed to be white supremacists. Well,
Right.
we take a different kind of tack. We say basically, if you're not talking about the structure of white supremacist domination, if you're not talking about the colonial capitalist system that's a reflection of white power, if you don't understand that white supremacy is about white power, then you don't understand what white supremacy is. It has both an ideological and a structural component. The ideological component is one in which there's an ideal that Western white civilization represents the apex of human development. That Western culture is the culture that everyone should aspire to. Okay, this ideal of white Western society and culture representing the apex of human development is an ideal that doesn't just exist in the minds of white people, but it is part of the colonial experience. So you have non-Europeans who believe the same thing. And for
Right.
them, assimilation is their major objective. But there's also the more important structural element. We say that white supremacy has a structural component. It's based on this colonial capitalist system. Some of its institutional manifestations include the International Monetary Fund, the World Bank, the dollar domination, NATO. These are the structural manifestations of white supremacy. So we're not concerned about trying to change people's minds, make them like us or whatever. The objective, if you are really opposed to white supremacy, is to focus on white power, to take away the ability of these social forces, these classes, these people, to be able to impose themselves on us and the rest of collective humanity. So that's where we got to go. That's why, in some ways, this whole Tyre Nichols thing is really a godsend. I mean,
Oh yeah.
unfortunately, of course, the brother's dead, and we saw the tape, but it's allowing us to really begin to address this issue of what is the role of the police.
Right.
What is the role of the state? Okay, what is the state here in this country and other parts of the world? So, that is a confusion we have to deal with. But we have to deal with it though boldly, without being concerned about um, stepping on people's toes or hurting people's feelings. If you
Right.
out here in the street talking about something about some kind of justice for Tyre Nichols, what is that?
Empty slogan there. Yeah. Yeah. It means nothing. And I appreciate. I knew. You know. Um, when we're talking about certain issues within the larger issue, within the larger context, you have to go get the guns. You know what I mean? So that's why I brought you on here today. Um, with that in mind, we're talking about white power, and then you have folks who will jump up and down. They say, well, if the cops weren't, African, then they wouldn't have been arrested, and their pictures wouldn't have been posted on the joint. Like that makes a difference. You understand what I'm saying? As if these Negroes didn't believe that the quote unquote blue that upholds the white supremacist power structure here domestically on the local level, as if that didn't, as if that wasn't a shield, or they thought it was a shield because they forgot that they were Negroes. Um, I want to speak to that because of the fact that they get confused into thinking that, okay, well, you know the what if, or why is it that, as if that is of any importance, right?
It
I
doesn't
want
make
to
any
touch
sense.
on that. Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense. What is the argument? I mean, if they were white, then that means that there would have been a delay and they're being fired, prosecuted, maybe, But there's this is the kind of lazy thinking that people are engaged in.
Right.
The only difference was a number of differences, but one of the differences with the situation in Memphis is that you have a labor agreement between the city and the labor union that protects these pigs. Is that unlike many other agreements across the country, the bosses, in this case the superintendent or the chief, has the ability to go in and fire someone without about all the other kinds of things that you have to jump or hoops you have to jump through in other cities. Um, Secondly, they knew that they had an issue, okay, and they knew that the new tendency now is to uh, sacrifice some of the pigs in order to maintain order. Okay, and yeah, it is a little bit easier when you got some Africans who are involved in this process. Okay, but all that speaks to the fact that the people who are making these critiques understand the white supremacist nature of this colonial system. So, if they're not actively working to overthrow this system, then what are they doing? What are they doing? So the argument is like, it's like circular. What does that mean? Okay, because they were black, then maybe they shouldn't been given the same kind of consideration as the white
Right.
folks. Well, that would have made
Right.
y'all even more mad.
Damn right. Right. And I'm glad you pointed it out because even you know uh, and I unite with everything you said, but along with that, we're talking about the woman police chief. She was actually she was a commander here in Atlanta, and she was fired back in 2008. Before getting,
Uh-huh.
yeah. So the situation was that now she was a commander over the Red Dogs, which the Red Dogs was a notorious police gang out here. In fact, they were the pigs that were responsible for murdering 92-year-old Katherine Johnson. They were straight up
Yes.
bullies. Every
Right.
time we see them, you got to be on red alert because they was dealing with you as if as if a rival street organization. But this particular woman, this Chief Davis, she was over the special operations section, which included SWAT, mounted patrol, helicopter units, so on and so forth. But the thing was, in 2008, she was fired for an alleged quote unquote botched sex scandal. Okay, there was a situation, a sex crime investigation, where one of her officers or one of her sergeants under her, the sergeant's husband, had gotten caught with pictures of underage girls, underage children, and she had instructed this chief right here, Chief Davis, instructed a few other officers to not investigate the situation. So she was trying to sweep it under the rug, and they pretty much turned her in. She was demoted. The two detectives, they testified against her, and about this whole, because the husband was allegedly producing child porn, and she was just like, that's my homegirl's husband, so I'm gonna just let it go ahead and slide. So she was demoted at first, I think, from major to lieutenant, and then from there she was ultimately fired. She challenged the chief at the time, Richard Pennington, and she got her job back, but then she ended up resigning and ended up working in Durham. So up until, I believe, in 2016, she was working in Durham, and then she was hired by the mayor there in Memphis. So she has a track record of her own. I'm saying that to say she didn't want the smoke. She didn't want the wool to be pulled and to say, okay, well, she was already involved in a situation, right? So she didn't want to cover this up. So these Negroes right here, they had to be the sacrificial lamb, whether they wanted to be or not. So we have to point that out because of the fact that it's not just, this black woman, she stood up and folks are jumping up, clapping and everything, talking about black girl magic, and that's good, and so on and so forth. And then again, you have these other Negroes who are fighting and like, okay, well, she wouldn't have fired them if they were white. So I wanted to point out that particular contradiction as well. Right now, we see around the country, folks are upset about this situation, and it's, I almost want to say rightfully so, because here it is, you have these Negroes, these what do they call them on the plantation? These head niggas that come along and they feel that they can just brutalize and terrorize folks that look like them. Here it is, this 29-year-old young man who, I have children older than this young man, right? I have a son his age, and I'm looking at him, 140 something pounds, and all of these big burly Negroes beat this boy to death, and they're talking about bringing him up on second-degree murder charges. What's your thoughts on that, just as far as like the mindset that would cause Negroes like these to do what they were paid to do, terrorize?
We know that the group that hates black folks and poor black folks the most are Negroes.
Without a doubt.
They have assimilated the white supremacist ideology where they don't see any value in other black folks, but especially in black folks who they perceive to be not like them. That is, they may not be middle class or whatever. And they know that they have enough latitude, enough power to brutalize our people and get away with it. Look, the one thing that when I watched that video, because we have been set up to we're gonna see something truly horrific, okay? And there was some stuff about it that was fucked up, no question about that. But I don't know about you, brother Kalonji. I done seen some police whoop some ass much worse than that.
Without a doubt.
The only thing that happened here was that the brother died. If that brother, this is what people have to understand too. If the brother wouldn't have died,
wouldn't have been
all
nothing.
that would have been was another night in the ghetto.
That's right. Okay? That's right.
And
right.
people have to understand that because it goes back again to the role of the police, which is what we've got to be dealing with, not the drama of this thing. Because yeah, they beat them. It was fucked up how they beat them, you know. But like you said, I mean, 140 something pounds, these big ass brothers. I mean, they were just teeing off on the cat.
Right. Right.
He was out of his mind. He was like, you know,
Yeah.
that's why, you know, that regression that takes place when they call out from the mama and stuff. You
Yes.
know,
Yes.
I don't know about you, but I'd have heard brothers who are getting whooped do the same thing, man. It's a horrible
Yeah.
sound. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So this is, you know, so this is again, this is what they do in our communities. White pigs and black pigs. The issue we got to deal with is the pigs and what kind of capacity we have to be able to push them out, these occupying forces, in order for us to take full responsibility of public safety in our communities. Because you know, as a community organizer, and I know for decades of it, you go into any community in our communities, even today,
Right.
you do your mapping exercise with the community. You map out what is in fact the community. You begin to identify, you know, what are the top issues that people have, and you know if crime is not number one, is in the top three always.
Of
Okay,
course.
and part of that, a part of the critique is you're gonna have a whole lot of, like, you know, older folks in the meeting who've been living there. They are the homeowners and shit. You got the business owners. Their whole thing is we don't get the same level of services.
Right.
The police, they ignore us. They're not protecting us. You know, these are the realities you have to deal with when you're organizing our folks. So if we want to push folks out, to push the occupying forces out, you can't move. You ain't nobody gonna be moved with all this rhetoric about, you know, make it ungovernable and all this, because you ain't gonna make it ungovernable.
Right.
You ain't gonna move the masses if you don't have if you can't demonstrate that you have the capacity to not only to push these pigs out, but also to provide public safety. You're not going to win the people over. That's just an
Right.
objective fact. Okay.
Right.
So, you know, these are complex kinds of political challenges we've got to deal with, you know? And, you know, but again, we have to deal with them. We got to raise these issues. But we got to demand that these 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 so-called activists, and even some of these so-called revolutionaries, they
Right.
go straight to the street. They do all this, you know, yammering about justice and all of this, but they ain't building no capacity.
They ain't
In
building shit.
they ain't
Right.
doing no base building.
Right.
Okay,
Right.
so you got Nichols today. You got the comrade there in Atlanta. You're gonna have somebody next week.
Have somebody later on today.
There you go.
Right now.
You just
And
won't know about it.
yeah, and I'm glad that you I mean, so many nuggets, as we say, so many takeaways, because I'm thinking back just on just coming up as a youth in Bridgeport, growing up in the projects. I can recall, I'm 12, 13 years old, hopping off the elevator, and the police got cats on the ground, got them on the floor. As soon as they see your ass, ram your head up against the damn wall, you know what I'm saying? Throw you on the ground, kick you in your ass, stomp you, spit on you, all types of shit. This was business as usual. You
Right.
understand what I'm saying? So when you talk about seeing people get dealt with worse, yeah, I've seen these motherfuckers throw people out the window. You understand what I'm saying? Run them over while they chasing them. You know what I'm saying? Slam them, all kinds of shit, stomp them. And this is, you know, I remember folks used to say, well, you always saying fuck the police, and you shouldn't talk like that. You understand what I'm saying? And I'm like, I don't, the relationship that we had is one that's like, the least I can say. You understand what I'm saying? It's like what Bunchy Carter talked about. He said, if you can't do nothing but spit, then motherfucker spit. You understand what I'm
Right.
saying? If you can't do
Right.
nothing else but spit, then do that. So I understand the sentiments. And I also understand that, like you mentioned, yeah, I mean, I didn't watch the video because of the fact that, like you said, we live this. So it's like, I'm not looking for anything amazing to happen. You know what I'm saying? Like you said, oftentimes, we've been there, done that. But the thing is, just the thought, knowing that it's gonna happen again, and it's gonna happen again, and it's gonna keep on happening, is the sad thing. But I think that I'm more upset, more than me being upset with the pigs. I'm more upset with the community response from the quote unquote organizers,
Mm,
because you have a lot of these folks who, for all practical purposes, want to be seen.
mm,
They want to build up their shit. They want you to say, okay, this is the number one organization over here.
mm.
If the conditions aren't changing, if the situation's getting worse, then what good is it for you to be the king of the broken people?
Right.
What good is it for you to be the high exalted almighty? I mean, it's confusing at times.
Mm, mm.
So I want to ask, like, how do you feel as a seasoned organizer, as someone that, I know we've been in the same spaces probably over the last 20 years on a few occasions, right? How do you feel? I'm saying in the last 20 years, as if
It's more
you
than
know
that. And then I was smiling about when I told you I first saw you. You can't remember. You're like, when did
I
that
know,
happen?
I know, but that right there, I mean, but that right there is a testament to the work, though,
Mm,
because of the fact that you go so many places, and you in the battlefield, you're not counting how many trees around. You know
right.
what I mean? I might look over, okay, that's a comrade. We'll link up later on, because over here I'm over here at this moment, and they're over there. But I want to ask you, like, how do we deal with these quote unquote organizers? Do we remain liberal? You know what I'm saying? And just don't say shit because we don't want to upset the flock, or how do we? I mean, what's your take on that?
We say in 2023, we can no longer bullshit. We got to call people and forces out. The stakes are just too high. And that's what I've been doing. I mean, I'm under fire now because I wrote a piece a few weeks ago when they came out with this Ukrainian Solidarity Network, a network that's to the right of the position of Donald Trump on Ukraine. And in that article, I named some names like Bill Fletcher, Howie Hawkins, this little young junior G-man over at Counterpunch magazine, Eric Dracer. We can't play. When people are out here like now, what is the demand
Right.
around this thing in Memphis? This shit is over. Now it's nothing but a morality play. Now it's nothing but being used as a weapon to generate further legitimacy of the system. People talking about how they moved, they indicted them, and they're being prosecuted, and so now we got to make sure they get convicted. What does that mean?
Nothing.
Okay, nothing. They're just being sacrificed. It has nothing to do with the system, the relationships of our community to this repressive state. Is all it has, all it's doing is confusing people. It is undermining radical consciousness. It is making people believe that there is a possibility of something called social justice or justice being rendered by a backward colonial capitalist system. Its very nature is in contradiction to you, to us, to our people.
No
Okay,
question.
if we're not building the kind of consciousness that helps us to understand that and will help us to resist the manipulation of the enemy, the ideological manipulation of the enemy, then we bullshit. So if those organizations are out here with this kind of left opportunism, organizing rallies on Memphis, they should be called out because they bullshit. You know,
I know.
I would argue, and I meant there, but from some of the stuff I'm seeing from Atlanta, there's some stuff in Atlanta that I find more interesting than Memphis, just in terms of this whole Cop City thing that I know we're going to talk about in a minute.
No
But,
doubt.
you know, this is where the sharpening contradictions are emerging. I don't, I feel sorry for Tyre Nichols and his family and all of that. you know. But the value of that piece is for us to use that as an ideological weapon to try to help people to understand the nature of this system and that be reducing uh, this phenomenon of oppression, just to these issues of race. I say later for this pork chop nationalism. You know, if you're not talking about revolutionary nationalism, then you bullshitting. This black people this and black people that. I don't have time for that anymore. If we don't have an analysis, a framework that helps us to differentiate what's their reality, that is the black mixed leadership class, the black petty bourgeois administrative managerial elite has been put on top of us, to control the natives. If we don't understand that their interests and our interests are different, then basically, again, we are just obscuring reality and perpetuating confusion. And we say, time out for that. Because these folks, this situation now is so critical because this system is spinning apart. Okay, these folks are prepared to engage in warfare without the ideological cover. Now they still use soft power, like what they're going to use with this Memphis thing.
Right.
But people have to understand we are at war. I know it's difficult and scary.
Yeah. Yeah.
To embrace that, but that's the reality. Africans, we are at war. They're waging war against us, and they're identifying our cutting edge organizations, the ones that don't retreat and don't compromise. Okay, and they propping up this, Black Lives Matter and all these kind of bullshit as a controlled opposition. You know, and so if they're doing that, we've got to be just as brutal in our ideological struggle, in terms of exposing forces, denouncing forces. I don't think we have any other choice at this point, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'm with you, man. It has to be war without terms, as George was saying. This is where we are right now. I wanna because you mentioned Cop City, which personally I feel is a misnomer. You know what I'm saying? Uh, I say it's a paramilitary training compound
Mm.
because of the fact that that is where it's coming from. It's about occupied forces, traditionally known as the police. Receiving instruction and preparedness on domestic urban warfare. Man, this is where we are, and it's clear it is a place where we're talking about 85 acres of training, courtesy of folks like Gilly, courtesy of all types of military and state forces, and it is corporate sponsored. It is a space where everyone from Wells Fargo to Amazon to Microsoft, Chick-fil-A, and so many other JP Morgans, all the old slave funders. It is a place where they are looking to prop up and build essentially a urban military base. I want to know what's your thought on it.
Let me ask you a question though. Uh, as far as you all know, the the forces that will be trained at this facility, will they be state forces only, or will they be training also non-state forces?
It is. We know that Gilly, um, which is the training forces over at Georgia State,
State.
the Israelis who've been there for the last 31 years. We know that they have a stake in it. It is. I don't believe, and I can't say for certain, but I don't believe that it'll only be state forces. Now they did uncover a few days ago that 43% of the folks being trained will be coming from outside of Georgia.
Yes.
So that can mean anything. you know.
What
But with this,
what I saw
yeah,
was primarily forces, police forces, and see, I'm
right,
raising that, brother Kalonji, only because of this. And I guess there's a sensitivity. You know, I'm sitting here in Colombia. I just came off a mission last week where we were up in the territories and saw some terrible conditions where our people and indigenous people are catching complete hell because of this of the conflict in these regions where you have these paramilitary forces, and paramilitary forces are forces that are not part of the state.
right,
Okay, now they can have connections because some of them do with the state, but it's important that people understand the difference between state actors and these non-state actors, because the state actors who are involved in brutality, who are involved in systematic oppression, that is important to be understood, because the very legitimacy of a state is supposed to be measured by its ability, its commitment to upholding the fundamental human rights of its citizens and residents. Okay, and so if a state is involved in a systematic process of violating our individual and collective human rights, then it delegitimizes itself. Okay, and that's a very, I think, a very powerful ideological point and weapon. Okay,
without
now
question.
the paramilitary forces, they get training because these are forces that are usually connected to various corporations, um, and they have their own training, on their own training outfits and facilities. They're the ones that provide the private security support and all of that. You know, but I think it's important that we make sure in our critiques and our rhetoric that we make sure that we keep the focus on the sharpest political contradiction.
Right up. Yeah. Now, and I unite with that wholeheartedly, and I think that that's part of, you know, the corporations themselves that are backing it. We're talking about literally 40 plus corporations, major corporations. I don't imagine them benefiting only from these state actors
And
because
you
of the
may be
fact
right.
that,
I think you may be right. I think that it'll probably be a situation where there'll be non-state, as you say, paramilitary forces also receiving some of that training. Yeah.
right. So that is why I would use that particular thing. Now
Yes.
again,
Yeah.
I don't have concrete evidence on it.
Right.
What they say, if it walk like a duck, you know. So you know, we will keep our eyes on the prize, as they say, right? So with that being said, you know, here we are. As you mentioned a few minutes ago, uh, the Nichols case, for all practical purposes, it's pretty much going to be civil. You know, you may have, you know, some, like they said, the charges will be brought up, second degree murder, whatever that means in Memphis, Tennessee. You know, we already know it's rare that police get it. I mean, get any real time. You know, here in Atlanta with the old Katherine Johnson case, I believe the cop that got the most time might have been like 11 years, some craziness like that,
Yeah.
for murdering a 92-year-old. Um, I want to ask you, what is your take on Cop City? Do you feel that the fight is futile, or do you think that, you know, there's still a chance at you know, putting a black eye in the game?
I'm gonna tell you, and I'm on the outside looking in, but what I'm looking at is the possibility of a real intensified fight. I think this thing can be won. I think there is a possibility of national mobilizations if the organizers have some vision in terms of how this should be done. Okay. Now again, I'm not there, but you know, these struggles that are taking place now in the streets of Atlanta, you know, I think they have to continue. I think that folks got to start bringing in other forces. Um, I'm not sure how much these students are involved. Um, I think that I think the conditions are right for a national mobilization. I think symbolically because of this thing taking place in the quote unquote black Mecca, because it's about training police forces from areas in which the predominant constituency, population that will be policed will be Africans and other colonized people, that this is a struggle worth drawing a line of demarcation and making sure that it doesn't that they don't win, that we shut it down. I think
Right.
I think this has a lot of juicy possibilities.
You know, and I definitely, unite with, drawing the line of demarcation. I unite with the fact that it's the quote unquote black Mecca, but I also look at Atlanta historically,
Mhm.
and when you think about Atlanta, there's been no true organization here because the state has had a vested interest in squashing um, any type of real movement. For example, folks think about when they think of Atlanta, they think about civil rights. They think about King, and you've never heard or you never hear anything significant that King has actually done here in Atlanta. Most of his work, his more popular or quote unquote serious work, was always outside of Atlanta. The March on Washington, the letter from Birmingham jail, the Montgomery bus boycott. He wasn't even murdered here. You know what I'm saying? He wasn't even assassinated here. But it's just like this particular. I believe ever since the Atlanta race riots of like 1906, it's been a real effort to make this a model for a false sense of black success and also a a place to imprison. This is the place where they held Garvey. This is the place where they held Imam Jamil, Dr. Matulu Shakur, and so on and so forth. Kamal Siddiqui, Varanza Bauer, so on and so forth. So I just don't. While I have faith in our people, I think that one of the things that I've noticed also since around the whole Floyd situation, it seems to me that it's been a whole lot of white led, white left led uh, protests and rallies, marches, so on and so forth. And one of the things I'm noticing as well is that counterinsurgency is at an all-time high. And with counterinsurgency being at such a height, folks are confused. And they say, okay, well, we got this many people out here, but we have to see how many of these people are actually agents of repression, how many of these people are actually agents of the state. And I'm looking, and even with the situation last week, the 7 arrests, 6 of the individuals, these young white folks, they weren't from Atlanta. And I'm not on that whole outside agitator bullshit, but I just found it strange that you had white boys and girls in their 20s coming from Spokane, Washington, and Kennebunkport, Maine, and places of the sort. You know, and these are folks who, for all practical purposes, were quote unquote caught on camera, you know, getting busy. My position, and I could be wrong, if you're going to be swooping down on a particular location, I would think that you would be a little more clandestine than perhaps putting other folks at risk. And I'm saying that only because of the fact that you have different types of sincere forces out there. You have folks who are new to the joint. Our job as organizers should always be not to demoralize the troops, but to strengthen them and strengthen their morale. But as soon as the police came out, all these folks they vamped, folks dispersed. So I was kind of confused by that. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, I think that you're pointing out what appears to be, again, from the outside, um, some contradictions. One of the things that up until this murder that I was watching very closely was the composition of the forces involved in this Cop City thing, and I couldn't understand why it seemed like uh, that the mobilization of the African community seemed to be so poor. especially since one of the arguments was this was impacting, you know, black communities and all of that. And so I was just curious about what was happening in terms of the framing, the face of this thing, that appeared not to result in a more massive turnout from the black community.
Right.
And that to me, if this thing has legs, that has to happen. Uh,
Absolutely.
but I suspect I'm at there that with a lot of the young organizers and even some of the young Africans, that you know is a challenge to try to come up with the, the language, uh, develop the cultural competency, because many of these organizers not even living in the communities they're trying to organize,
Right.
to be able to link up and build movement. And so, you know, if these really are gaps or contradictions, if this struggle goes forward, then these are the kind of things that have to be addressed. You've got to have, and I think they have to be addressed because one thing about this enemy, and even in particular, when you're dealing with these shrewd as Negroes, you know, you can't be selling wolf tickets.
That's right.
If they see that you don't have no real base, if you have a demo, and I don't know why people do these demos, Kalonji, it's like a demonstration is
Right.
you are demonstrating something.
Right.
You're demonstrating either you have strength or the way these folks organize shit, you demonstrated that you don't have no strength.
And
You
that's
don't call
exactly
no
what's going on.
demo. You don't call no demo if you can't really demonstrate that you got some base
Selling
and
wolf
you got some
tickets.
people. You just talking shit, and so
Yeah.
you're not going to move these Negroes
Right.
because people what people forget. It goes back to your earlier point is that in these cities across the country, probably less so now than it was about 2 decades ago, the Negroes up in these city governments all came out of the struggles. They were primarily civil rights struggles and all of that. But these folks, they were the opposition to the local white establishment. They knew how to build stuff and talk shit. Okay, you know, so you can't bullshit them. You can't bullshit the bullshitter. Okay, so when they look at your demos and they see you got a whole bunch of white folks from outside of Atlanta, you got a small group of some black folks, maybe some elders from the community. You might have a few students. You know, they're like, you know, we're gonna figure out a
It's a
way to
game. Yeah.
isolate you all and basically keep on doing what we got to do. All right.
Yes. So to your point, this is that's exactly the road I was headed down, right? So when you see that it's a city like Atlanta, it's the quote unquote black Mecca, and you see it's a predominantly white outside forces, European forces who are serving as cannon fodder or protectors or defenders of the land or whatever the case is, what that tells you, me, and any other organizer that's been organizing is there. We don't blame the Africans in the community. We blame the organizers because of the fact that you have to be in touch. You have to have your finger on the pulse to politicize and educate and inspire and agitate so that these individuals, these forces, will actually see the value in coming out. But when they look and all they see is, okay, well, these are a whole bunch of white folks out here. I ain't going out there fucking with them. You understand what I'm saying? Or if you say you see that, okay, boom, these are some tree huggers, quote unquote. You know what I'm saying? So I ain't rocking with them, or they ain't black, whatever, so on and so forth. Then there's an automatic divide. And part of the issue indeed is you have to be in and of the community in order for the community to understand you, in order for you to quote unquote speak the language of the people. And I think that that is one of the criticisms, the critiques that I would have. And it's almost it's so sectioned off, and it's such a multi-level attack going on the African community that they're confused as to which way to go.
Mm.
You understand what I'm saying? So when the politics ain't correct, and when they're uncertain and unclear, then they won't be moved. They see the people get involved through inspiration, aspiration, and desperation, right? This situation ain't desperate enough because to them, to the masses, they're already looking and seeing the police fuck us up in the neighborhood every day. Who cares what they building? You understand what I'm saying? Because one of the things that I'm noticing with a lot of organizers is they organize in certain communities, but certain places they're not going to step in because of the fact that it's the stench of death is there.
Mm.
You understand what I'm saying? The reality of poverty is different feeding some folks that's laying on the sidewalk than it is dealing with folks who are living in conditions that are more unbearable and the safety less safe than them sleeping on the sidewalk downtown. There's a certain luxury of sleeping on the pavement downtown Atlanta opposed to being up in the bluff somewhere in one of these cracks and crevices. You know what I'm saying? Where you still have the quote unquote zombies. You still have the folks who are demoralized. You still have the folks who are on that plantation poison and they're trying to sell themselves and their babies, so on and so forth. That's a different level of organizing. Unfortunately, I believe that a lot of organizers these days, they organize in a safe manner.
Mm-hmm.
You understand what I'm saying? And
Yeah.
you can't say that we're at war and you enjoying certain luxuries. You understand what I'm saying? We talk about Rodney going into the community with the people. Sometimes you got to live amongst the people and you got to be the people.
That's
And
the only way.
that's ultimately what it becomes.
That's the only way. I mean, there's so many of these situations that I've been seeing over the last few decades of people swooping in or parachuting into communities and trying to
Yes.
build oppositional movements, and they have not been that effective. You got to ground yourself. You know, you asked the question a little bit earlier about some of the where you kind of intimated some of the struggles that have taken place in Atlanta, or the fact that you have such a weak organizational base in Atlanta, and I will argue, as I said a moment ago, that there was some significant organizing in Atlanta at certain points.
Yes.
But as the Negroes started being incorporated into the administrations, then there was a significant drop off, because in many cases, some of the most talented organizers started going into the state, into the city council, and all of that. When Maynard Jackson won in 1973, that had an impact on political opposition in Atlanta. When we started organizing in opposition to this systematic program to shut down public housing in Atlanta, you couldn't do it from the outside in. What you had to do was to work with those resident presidents and folks who were in the public housing, who were looking for assistance.
Right.
And you come in and you help to train folks, and you have to support the struggles. It meant also too, you had to have conversations with the young brothers who didn't understand that why you all got your presence here, you got your corners over there where you all are slinging stuff. You need to understand they got a plan to eliminate all this.
Yeah, right.
And so you all need to understand why we over here organizing in Mrs. Smith's kitchen, and with the meeting spilling out into the front room because the places are so fucking small. Okay, and that you all need to be part of this, and so you got to go from the bottom up. I mean, every struggle in every developmental project in Atlanta came as a result of the black community being the victim. East Lake, I think when you came down to Georgia, East Lake was still probably in place.
Yeah.
They wiped that out. Okay, we was involved in that struggle. Techwood Homes, the Olympics did that in, but it was set up by the Negroes who, with all this messaging about the violence and crime and all of that, and the people being tricked into believing that if they signed that agreement, and we were desperately trying to educate people that if you all sign this agreement to voluntarily leave with the lie that you're going to be allowed to return once they build this mixed income community, it ain't going to happen. They're lying to you, and that's exactly what happened. I mean, Vine City and the stadium.
Yes.
You know, I remember. Dorothy. What's her name? The whole struggle.
Yeah.
Remember the Dorothy.
I know what you're talking about. My brain is froze.
Yeah.
I thought it was me, so I'm glad you froze too. But go ahead.
The whole struggle around that stadium. That
Yes.
was an intense struggle. Okay, because we understood that it's going to wipe out the Vine City community, and that's exactly what it did.
Right, and that's
So
that's the playbook, though.
yeah,
I
yeah.
mean,
Look,
yeah,
we even
around the
was
country.
involved. We was
Yeah,
even involved in a struggle in the early '80s, and trying to limit the expansion of the King Center,
hmm.
and we had to fight against Bill Campbell. You talked about Bill Campbell. You talked about the King family. People
Yes.
don't realize Daddy King was one of the biggest slumlords in the city.
What you talking about, boy?
Daddy King had
Right.
shit all through the Fourth Ward. Okay, and he was more than willing to sell his properties to the National Park Service and make a killing.
Right.
Okay, which meant the displacement of people. We kicked in the door of a house there in the Fourth Ward and started organizing opposition. And we were fighting everybody: the King Center, the City Council, the mayor, the National Park Service, the Georgia State. I mean, without a whole lot of help.
Right.
Besides and then there was splits because you had you had the bourgeois business workers, I mean owners, who were falling prey to the notion that they're going to make some money if you allow this neighborhood to be gentrified and you let the King Center do his thing. Okay.
Right.
We had anyway. I don't want to go into details of that, but my point is that basically
Yeah.
is that the people around the country were left relatively disarmed for like almost 2 generations,
Yes.
and we see the consequence of it. I move across the U.S. Okay, and I have never seen this level of disorganization ever among our people.
I agree
They,
with you. Yeah.
it's nothing there.
It really, and I'm so glad you said that. And that's that was the point I was attempting to make a few minutes ago when I'm saying, okay, boom, yes, I have faith in us, but it definitely seems like we getting going backwards. I remember my mother used to say, she used to get mad. She used to say, boy, the more I teach you, the dumber you get. And that's what that's what the internet has done right now. You know what I'm saying? That's what the whole nonprofit industrial complex is done right now. So you have folks who won't even touch the grass talking about they grassroots. You understand what I'm saying? So, it's an amazing time. And with this whole internet social media situation, it's a battle of wit. It's like who's the smartest slave? You understand what I'm saying? My position is always outwork us. You understand what I'm saying? Like I don't, all that shit. When you finish bumping your gums, the police still gonna be slapping cats around, murdering them, choking them out, shooting them, so on and so forth. Political prisoners still gonna be locked the fuck up, and you sitting here telling me about some theory. So the thing at hand right now, we have to arrive at a point where theory and practice is hand in hand again. Because I feel like and some folks blame it on COVID, but I'm not buying that bullshit. I think that over the past decade or so, it seems as if movement has begun to dry up. It seems like, that physical one of the things I remember just going out, my OGs, whenever they would see me, they would ask me what kind of propaganda I have on me. No matter where I was at, I could be at a party, I could be at an event, I could be on a train, on a bus, or whatever. They want to know, what am I pushing? What do I have in my bag? What do I have in my pocket so that I can give to the people, so that I can politicize? Because every opportunity, we gonna seize the time. You know what I'm saying? And being caught without propaganda was being caught without your weapon. You understand what I'm saying? You know, in our training right now, you know, with the African Martial Arts Institute, shout out to my man Balagoon, you know, it's a problem if you don't at least have a blade on you at any moment. And I didn't, but that's old school right there. My grandfather used to carry a couple knives. My grandfather used to tell me keep two knives on you. He said you get into it, drop one, and then when they go to reach for it, open them up. You know what I'm saying? So that's from my grandfather. You know what I'm saying? So so propaganda and political education is in line, and I feel like somehow, and I'm not definitely not bombing on the youth. One of my daughters is a hardcore organizer, and a lot of folks know her, but they just don't know she my daughter, and it don't mean shit to me. You understand what I'm saying? But my point in saying that is, what do you feel about the current conditions, where we are as quote unquote organizers, and what must be done?
First, let me say that one of the other issues that we have to understand that helps to explain why we have such a dearth of effective organizations, independent, radical organizations, is as a consequence of the NGOification, if I could use that term, where you have people, you have some people whose only organizing or political experiences are with NGOs, and you get trained a certain kind of way.
Right.
You use certain kind of language, de-radical language, if you will.
Right.
And you sometimes will attract some very talented individuals into these formations. Individuals that, if they weren't in those formations, they might be actually doing some real organizing, with our people. So
Right.
this expansion, this massive expansion of NGOs has had has been very successful in siphoning off a lot of talent, okay, and creating like a kind of a certain kind of consciousness among organizations. So you get that issue. I'm gonna tell you, brother, it's we have to almost rebuild formations from the bottom up. One of the problems we had is that the counter-revolutionary process was very successful in breaking the continuity of our movement. And so when you break the continuity of movement, then you break up the transfer of information, transfer of knowledge. Okay, and so now you have people who have to basically they believe they have to reinvent the wheel. They have to just create things that have already been created, but they just don't know about it. Okay, so we've got to recognize our weaknesses and tell no lies and claim no easy victories, and really get serious about building independent organizations. That's the only way that we can go. Independent organizations with a crystal clear uh, political line. Okay. Now, there's another component of your question that maybe I may have slipped. That
In regards to, I mean, I got, yeah,
I think I answered it.
yeah,
You
you,
you supposed to
you did
remember. See,
it in a cool
I'm
way.
getting old, so I can forget stuff. But
Is that you gonna use the old card now?
exactly, exactly, yeah.
We ain't having that, man. What Chase say? Death, death or victory, brother. You know what I'm saying? That's how we lead the battlefield, right? Um, I definitely appreciate your consistency. You know what I mean? And the fact that that you're always ready at the drop of a hat, drop of a dime. You know what I'm saying? I definitely appreciate it because it's we live in a time right now where folks get confused and they don't know the role of a comrade, right?
Mm.
They get confused if we don't hang out together, or we ain't a part of the same crew, whatever, so on and so forth. Then we ain't friends. I don't want to be your friend. You understand what I'm saying? I don't need no friends. I need comrades. We don't need no damn allies. You know what I'm saying? It's time out. It's not enough anymore to put your Black Lives Matter post in the window and slip a donation. You know what I'm saying? There's responsibility for that. If you're gonna be what they say, if you're gonna be a monkey, be a gorilla, and that's a GUE.
Mm.
Um, what's your thoughts in closing for or what words do you have for some of these younger organizers and some of I'm not even gonna say younger organizers because this cats between uh our ages that are I mean they're like politically retarded for lack of better words. You know what I'm saying?
Mm.
And that's not me. You know what I'm saying? I'm just saying they're totally going in the wrong direction. What's the words of advice and where do you say we go from here, my man?
I said we got to support young organizers who are coming up. Um, we have to allow them to get into this struggle because the only way people are developed is through practice. We've got to bring back the dialectic of theory and practice. That is pushing the notion too that it ain't about just what I call actionism. You've got to also be studying. You got to be summing up. You got to be involved in being a developing theory. And anybody, no matter how uneducated in terms of formal education you are, you could be a theoretician. You know, because you're dealing with and trying to grapple with understanding your realities. Okay, and that process of critically analyzing is exactly what we need to build organizers. Okay, so we got to build stuff again from the bottom up, but we have to let people know, or at least take the position that if you see, one of the reasons why some of the older ones have gotten sort of confused and conservative, quite frankly, is that, like I told Bill Fletcher, as a Bill, the difference between me and you is you grew up. And if growing up is being like you and condemning our people in Baltimore as thugs like Barack Obama,
Yeah.
you know, then I ain't gonna never grow up.
Hey,
Okay,
I'm a Toys
that
R Us kid. Yeah,
I'm going to always believe in the possibility of us being able to win. Okay,
that's right.
and that kind of attitude, that kind of position has to be communicated, but I think one has to also model that. Okay, because it's very easy for people to get demoralized. You know, it's very easy for you to start learning a little bit of something and now you become a great theoretician. You can go into a situation that you look at stuff and analyze them, and that ain't shit. And then eventually you drop out the movement because it ain't good enough for you. You know, now we've got to help people to understand that part of the process is in fact doing what Amilcar Cabral said you got to do too. If you come out the petty bourgeoisie, you got to commit class suicide. Okay, you got to be committed to the ideal that not only we can win, but you are going to commit yourself to that victory and understand that this is a lifelong commitment. It ain't no thing where you're supposed to, do it for a few years and then you go off and retire. Man, how does a revolutionary retire, especially when we still oppressed?
And listen,
You don't retire, you surrender. That's what it is.
Yes, yeah. I had a man. I struggled to even call him an elder because he was so disappointing. You know, brother said to me, he's talking to me. See, I used to be in the movement and such, this and that, and blah blah blah. I said, yeah, man, that's cool, man. So he went on for about 5 minutes. I said, look here, my man, I don't respect movement dropouts. You
Mm.
understand what I'm saying? We not, the war's not over. You know what I mean? So, this is protracted. You telling me about what you used to do. And this is I think one of the cop outs. That's the defense mechanism that folks use to say, well, you know, I hear what you talking about, young blood. That's played out. You know what I mean? When you are at war, everybody's involved. Everything's involved. Your dog is involved. If you got a cat, you better be a revolutionary cat. You understand what I'm saying? Everything, every part of your being should be about revolution. And I think that folks are confused into believing or try to confuse other people into believing out of fear that they can just walk out and go get this nice job and live happily on the hill. But it don't, we're not going out like that. I appreciate, the fact that you're clear.
Trying to be.
Man, listen, it's hard, ain't it?
It's hard, yeah. But like I said, you got to, when you're working with Africans and a whole couple of generations of Africans who are stepping into this movement,
Right on.
it's important that we uphold the revolutionary ethics,
No doubt.
that razor focused uh, uh, view of where we need to go, and we have to embody the kind of people that we also have to be if we're talking about building a revolutionary movement.
Without a doubt. Without a doubt. Shout out to our brother, comrade Mukasa. You just made me think about him because I remember him calling me one time, and I was feeling uh, definitely not defeated, but I was feeling like I was in a blue funk, for lack of better words, right? And he said, man, it's hard, ain't it? I said, yeah. He said, it's rough, ain't it? I said, yeah. He said, make you want to give up, don't it? I said, man, sometimes. He said, that's why we took the job. You know what I'm saying? He said, this is why we here, my man. Ain't no rest for the weary. We gonna win in spite of ourselves. Hey,
But
definitely appreciate you coming on board
yes,
today.
sir.
Got to
Yes, sir.
get you back on. We talk international, because but I really I felt that it was necessary today of all days because we keep seeing coming across these social media vines, all kinds of crazy shit about you know what's going on and folks not being clear about why things are taking place. So again, I appreciate your work. Stay on top, and
Yes, sir.
we're gonna win in spite of ourselves, brother.
Yes, sir. Definitely, definitely. Thank you again for inviting me. And anytime, just let me know. I'll be here.
Without question. So I'm gonna be calling you a whole lot. Don't trip. Anyway,
All right,
no,
brother.
yes,
All right.
sir. You're checking out RSTV. That was comrade Ajamu Baraka. We appreciate him coming on. If it's your first time tapping into Black Power Media, make sure that you hit the subscribe button, as they say. It always sounds funny me saying that because in my mind I'm not really on the internet, but um, hit the like button, subscribe, share this particular program as well. We appreciate all of your support, your continued support, and let's win. There's a whole lot coming on this week. Stay tuned. On Sunday, of course, you have Sundays on Sunday nights at 8 p.m. Monday morning, we have Gorilla Intellectual University, which is co-hosted by Dr. Jared Ball, Dr. Joy James, and myself. You can catch us this Monday from 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. EST. We'll be talking to Margaret Kimberly from Bar Black Agenda Report. Also Tuesday through Thursday, check out the Remix Morning Show. There's a whole lot of good stuff coming up on there. And Friday we'll be back again. Liberation Earn Your Liberation with Dr. Jared Ball. Anyway, you've been checking out RSTV. Stay on point, and we will win in spite of ourselves. Be safe out there.